Restaurant Unstoppable. What the most successful restaurateurs know that you don't. So with excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest. He is the owner of Rocco's Tacos and Tequila Bar, Rocco Mangel. My man, Rocco, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Of course I am. I'm
Yes.
real excited to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here. Vaughn Dugan was the guy who calls you out. That was almost a year ago. We finally made it happen. I'm out here in Florida traveling again. I know this is going to be a good one, but let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
So you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. That's a Bob Marley quote. Pretty cool. I live by that through the trials and tribulations I've been through in my life. And that's like my startup. You asked me what I had, and it's stuck in my phone. So I'm glad I was.
I love that. So say it one more time.
So you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have.
And you had a lot of experiences over the past, say, 10, 20 years where you had to step up to the plate and get strong. So we'll get into that.
Okay.
But where does it make sense to start sharing your story? I know you grew up in hospitality. You had a grandfather who was the general manager of a pretty famous
restaurant called the Copacabana in Manhattan, and he was in the hospitality industry. My great uncle Ira was Louis Armstrong's manager, entertainment, Eddie Fisher, kind of like that like nightlife vibe during that time. It passed down to my father, who owned 3 restaurants in Long Island. And that's kind of where I started. It's like, hey, you could wash pots. You got 2 hands, and you're able to walk and move. Yeah. And this was in the 80s, and I ended up getting my start with my father, his middle name happens to be Copa.
Okay.
My grandfather also opened up the Sands Hotel in Vegas.
Oh, wow.
And then he ended up coming back and
living
in Brooklyn.
Deep
roots.
Deep roots in the hospitality industry. So reflecting back at, these obvious mentors in your life, your grandfather, your father, what were the biggest lessons you think that they instilled in you as far as what it takes to be successful in this industry?
Interesting you should ask. So I looked at everything that they did wrong.
Yeah.
And it's different times, technologically and pandemic wise. And there's so many variables that we have that they didn't, but there's a lot of variables that they had that we do. So in looking at restaurant guys are interesting, right? The way they spend the money, the way that they live their life. And what they do, I've learned one of the things is you can't have an ego and be a restaurateur. I don't think both of those things work. I think that you have to be a hands-on owner, which both my grandfather and my father were, hands in going in, hands in coming out, and making sure that you're part of the entire operation. And I learned from that. I also saw the struggles that my father had, and unfortunately I took the bad and I made it into the good, and I still live through some of those lessons that I learned today.
So what were some of those struggles your father went through?
I just think, the number one, he was thrifty. Money, he had a restaurant in Long Island in the 80s that was, blowing up, as we would say. It was very, very, very busy. You could smoke in the restaurant back in those days, and it was the spot to go. And I think the way that he managed his finances and what he did, instead of making it into something bigger, he was just comfortable. And then he spent money on luxury items and did certain things with his lifestyle. He ended up selling the building and moving down here. Came down with a significant amount. He got a job back in the restaurant business, and then he switched to real estate. But I think that was his choice. And maybe I just look at the way that, people get really wealthy really fast if they have a successful restaurant.
Yeah.
I had that issue, meaning that not necessarily wealthy, but we had one restaurant on Clematis Street in 2007 that all of a sudden just blew up, and it went to my head, and it cost me some major sacrifices in my life that I had to make, and got me to where I am today, being strong and fierce. My father was a very, very hard worker, so I learned from day one. He would be there at 8 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock in the morning some nights, and I don't know if there was some dry goods and some other stuff involved, but he was there and he worked hard, and he definitely was a mentor to me.
So I want to pull back some layers on what you've shared with us so far. You mentioned earlier on one of the lessons you learned is you can't have an ego in this industry. Where did you see that there was ego in reflecting back?
So I'm not going to mention restaurateurs by name.
Yeah.
I think that people on the program can figure it out themselves. You know, I am Rocco from Rocco's Tacos, but I'm also Rocco the dad. I'm also Rocco the guy that, you know, has multiple sclerosis. I'm also the guy that has a fiance, and you know, I'm also a person, but I'm also Rocco the busboy. I'm the waiter, the pantry, the grill guy. You know, I want to be able to do everything. I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
I have another saying that nobody works for me. And if you do, then we have a major problem. If you work with me, we're all going to achieve the same goal. So that's what I'm talking about. I've seen restaurateurs come in, and I've seen a lot of guests come in, and nobody's a customer in my restaurant either. We have a welcome to my house attitude.
Yeah.
I think Vaughn has the same kind of feeling. Do you know who I am? You know, like people walk in. I've gotten on a microphone and been like, we have another guy that doesn't know who he is. I don't want to ever walk in my restaurant like I've arrived. And I think that causes a little bit of fear and insecurity in a lot of the people that work with you.
Absolutely.
So that's where I'm saying about the ego.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason why I brought that to the conversation, or brought that back to the surface, is because I think that you're right. There's a ton of ego in this industry, and I think once you can put your ego aside and realize it's not about you, it's about everyone else,
right?
You can go so much further. But you see this massive ego. It's like it hits you in the face with the restaurant industry, especially with people just chasing awards, and you know what I'm saying? Like it's what's going through your mind right now?
The most important person in the room for me is the dishwasher. I tell it all the time. Everybody asks me, who's the best guy I have? I said, you want to meet him? I walk in the back. I'm like, that guy.
Yeah.
Because if he stops, we're finished.
Yeah.
Operation over. I'm like, but everybody looks at the guy in the suit, maitre d', and, you know, he's important too. But you have to really understand being a restaurant man or a restaurant guy of the way that the machine works, right? He's the gas. He's the fuel that feeds the fire. The busboy, if he doesn't clean a table. So it's interesting the way you say, you know, that there is certain people that deserve the, you know, success, people that have come up from the ranks, and next thing you know, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different restaurants. But like celebrity chefs and these shows and some of these other things, which is great what people do. I'm not here to discount that. But you can tell how, you know, destroyed they are on national TV because they didn't, you know, make their mise en place right, or they didn't, you know, they just think, and then that's it. And, you know, that stays with them for a long time. And what does it hurt? Their ego.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So for me, I'm a working restaurant guy. I happen to be Rocco from Rocco's Tacos. One of the things that you're sitting in front of me, I'll show you, is if you complain or you compliment on the website, it comes to my phone.
Yeah.
And I'll call you right away. And I'll say to you, it could be 11 o'clock at night. Hey, it's Rocco from Rocco's. I saw you were in Naples and you had a bad experience. They're like, wait a second. I'm like, yeah, you just, wait. And then people, number one, you accept, acknowledge, and apologize for disrupting their meal in my house because they're my guest. And I think that's important too. Got, you know, 900, almost 1,000 employees, and I have to be the big brother making sure that these guys are doing the right thing, but I can't be everywhere at once. Not having an ego is getting on a phone and calling and accepting a customer saying to, or a guest rather, hey, you know what? The food sucked. This was bad. This was this. And you have to sit back and you have to say, you know what? I'm going to make it better. Come back. And some people will be like, no, I can't do it. You know, that's how you don't have an ego.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm loving what you're dropping on us right now. And if you get, I had a funny thought as you were sharing that. If you guys want to connect with Rocco, just say one of his restaurants sucked and you'll get a direct call. You can ask him any question you want. I'm just kidding. Don't do that to Rocco. But dude, you're absolutely right. Like we got to put the ego aside. We have to realize that we're here. It's about everyone else, not me. And I think that's the mentality you have to have.
We're in the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
It's been so difficult. I don't know how to be hospitable from 6 feet away. You know, with this pandemic and everything, it's been very challenging for me. You know, I'm sitting, you know, plexiglass and this, and we're body language people, right?
That's
shaking
why I travel
hands,
on site.
right?
Yeah.
Shaking hands, touching, hugging. You know, what's up, man? Haven't seen you in a while. Oh my God, there's Rock, and it's hard. I mean, it's tough.
So, you graduated college in 2007.
I didn't graduate college.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You went to college. You went.
I went to college for 3 weeks.
From 1990, I think it was on your LinkedIn profile. It was like 1997 is when you were done with college. I just say that.
So what happened was, I give you real quick, and that might not be up to date, but I went to college in 1991.
Okay.
I went to college for 3 weeks, and I got in trouble.
Okay.
And I got kicked out of school and lost my financial aid and went home. And during that period of time, which is real quick, I'll give you the quick thing. It was my 4 years of college were back in my father's restaurants working. He ended up moving to Florida in like 95.
Okay.
And I was going nowhere. Bad, fast. I worked at the Wolf of Wall Street. I did Stratton Oakmont. And I was going to get in big trouble. And my cousins dropped me off on the Jersey Turnpike, and I drove to Florida. I arrived here September 1st, 1997.
Okay.
We're sitting in my office on Clematis. There's a Starbucks down in front of Rocco's Tacos. That used to be Big City Tavern, which was the busiest restaurant of its time during that time. I walked in very arrogant with an ego to the general manager. You're going to hire me as a waiter. I remember the guy's name was Dave Giardi. He's like, are you applying for a job? Very bizarre. Gave me this test. What's the grape varietal and Pinot Grigio? I'm like, look, man, I know how to wait tables. Give me anything to sell. Ego. Didn't work. The guy goes, we're not going to hire you. We don't have a place for you here. So I ended up going back to my car, and then I came back and said, look, I'm living in my car. I have to go stay at my uncle's house. I got $60 in my pocket. I'll wash your car, man. I need to do anything. I became a busboy in that restaurant.
Okay.
Fast forward 10 years later, that's Rocco's.
Okay.
So I ended up buying a restaurant with the guys, not Dave, but I ended up buying the restaurant with the guys that were my boss 10 years later.
Okay. So I love that.
Yeah, it's
but
crazy.
Like, treat it like you own it, right? And
Yeah,
someday, you know.
It's pretty cool. Like,
Yeah.
you're walking in there bussing tables in a jacket, making $60 a night. And, I did go from there. I went down to Boca. I worked at Gigi's. That's where I ended up meeting Vaughn.
Okay.
Vaughn worked at Red Bull. He was a DJ. I mean, so we all became incestuous because we're all restaurant guys. Mm-hmm. To this day, we all help. I just got a phone call from another restaurant guy. But I worked at Gigi's. I worked at New York Prime, which was a steakhouse, and I did really, really well. And the only thing that I didn't do well was manage my lifestyle outside of work. I'm not going to be ashamed or lie to anybody here. I got fired from every single restaurant job I had, and then I got involved in the nightclub business.
Okay.
So from 2000 to 2005, I ended up working in nightclubs in Clematis because I figured that I could manage my lifestyle, but I could get to work at 11 and get home at 7 in the morning and sleep all day, and I didn't have to worry about lunch, dinner, or whatever. 2005, met a girl, really great. Girl looks at me, lipstick, makeup, cigarettes, whatever. You come home, let's get serious. You need to get a real job. Friend of mine opens up a restaurant in Boca called Moquila. Very big mentor of mine. Guy's name is Carl Alterman. He taught me a lot about restaurants, the good, the bad, the ugly. We're still like brothers to this day. Vaughn knows him as well. He's got a beer company in THC, does all this crazy stuff. Anyway, he taught me about tequila in 2005. So it ends up being like, Sex in the City and skinny margaritas. And I don't know if you remember, or I don't know how old you are, but that's what ends up happening. And tequila becomes this like phenom, right? So I said to my girlfriend at the time, I'm out. Sold a condo I had on the beach, and I said, I'm going to go around America. I'm going to go to all these Mexican places, and I'm going to do research and copy. So if you ever saw Chef, the movie, so I did that, and I went everywhere. San Diego, San Francisco. I went into restaurants. I looked, I picked, I made tacos at Tito's. I did all of this stuff. And next thing you know, I come back and I walk into a bar here, and my partner sitting at the bar, he goes, what's up, Rocco? My partner, Bill Watson. And I said, not much. And he goes, what are you doing? I said, well, I want to open a Mexican restaurant. He goes, check this out. We have a link to the lease on Clematis. Why don't we sit down and talk? 2 weeks later, I'm in Mexico with my other partner, Todd, and we took a roll of the dice. We opened Rocco's Tacos.
Okay. You just dropped a lot, and that's exactly what I needed. Was the fast version, big 30,000 foot view. So going through this time, I mean, reflecting back, you said that Carl, I mean, I don't want to skip over anything. Your time at Gigi's, New York Prime, any key lessons, any key mentors, any like evolutionary points, or do you think it's really where Carl started to mentor you at McKeown?
So I worked at this restaurant in Boca, which was with, I don't want to be stereotypical, but in Boca in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, just before the World Trade Center, it was like crazy. I don't, like I said, how old are you?
35.
Yeah. So you remember, like, it was just insane. Like, it was so busy. People were spending money left and right. And here I am working in a restaurant, and Gigi's was a restaurant, but then all of a sudden at night it turned into another place where they had live music. And I'm working in a restaurant with a nightlife vibe.
Okay.
And it was cool. It was in the back of Meisner Park, and it was busy, and we did well. Carl, Richie Pinella, these are key people in my life. Richie was the general manager. Carl was the owner. And there's some people that work there. Monty, Denise, Allen, Pete. So all of these people that worked with me ended up coming with me, which is crazy. Carl, his sons worked for me or with me. Carl never came on board, but I would call him. He's my go-to. Hey, man, what would you do? Or how would you do this? Or he's not in the restaurant game anymore, but he's so knowledgeable. And he helped me. He helped me through some real difficult times in my life. Then I ended up going to New York Prime, which is a little bit more fine dining, a little bit more reserved, where I got to see a different element of the steakhouse $100 check average person, $120 check average person. And there was people there that I met. There was a guy named John Gio who was the maitre d' /owner. To this day, I've never met anybody that could remember every single person's name that walked through without even looking at something, which meant to me that this was really cool. Like, take the hospitality aspect. People want to know, anybody can say, hey, what's up, man? But when you walk in and somebody says, hey, how are you, Vaughn? How are you, Rocco? How are you, Pete? My daughter, hello, Charlie. It just gives you a sense of feeling like this guy really cares, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. But this maitre d' was great.
Yeah, I can't help but think of How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? They say in that book that everybody's most favorite word is their own name.
Yeah,
and it's powerful.
It is.
Yeah.
And people love to hear their name and see it. So hospitality in general is that. But tequila ended up being my forte with Rocco's. Like I got my master's in tequila, which also later on in the program we could talk about. But I figured out that people want to drink this stuff, and they want to drink a lot of it, but they don't know enough about it. And I want to know everything I can. So I said, I'm going to open the biggest tequila bar in Florida.
Yeah.
Which is also a key component of having a bar aspect to a Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
And then I want to open a Mexican restaurant that isn't traditional Tex-Mex or whatever, or Americanized Mexican. I want to go to Mexico and really learn and entrench myself in the culture and bring it back, which is, if you've been to Rocco's, you can see most of the infrastructure's from Mexico, bars and everything,
There's so much you're dropping on us right now, and I'm loving every little, I want to pull back so many layers.
Okay.
So the one big thing, be number one at something. Have a unique selling proposition. And for you, it seems like you saw there was an opportunity with tequila. Nobody was focusing. Nobody was capitalizing on it. And you saw there was opportunity here. And you knew that if you could lean into that, if you could travel, and also get perspective. Go out there, travel, take it in, learn as much as possible, and don't be afraid to steal a little bit too. Like what's that saying, every great artist is also like you steal elements to make it your own, but you need that inspiration.
Yeah, the kind word is like research and development.
Yeah,
it's research and copy. I went to all of these places and I said, I like that. I'm going to take it. I'm going to put the spin on it, make it Rocco's. But do I have original ideas? Yes, but my original idea, somebody walks in and goes, "I thought of that before you." So so to your point, you're right. But I ended up looking at something as an opportunity during a time that I probably could have got more involved in the tequila business. But my vision of tequila in 2005 was I was getting taken home by a farmer in upstate New York because I drank half a bottle of Cuervo and I got sick. And that was and I said I couldn't even look at it. Then all of a sudden I tried this beautiful triple distilled tequila in the short fat bottle, which is, at the time I think it was Casa Noble or whatever. And I'm like, holy moly, this is delicious. And then you try a Reposado, and then you try an Añejo, and then now they have, now there's just a million different varietals of it. But that's what ended up happening to me. And then people came in, and here we have this Rocco's Tacos, phenom, 185 tequilas on Clematis Street. And then, I have 300 and something up in Orlando, and I just got these big tequila bars.
So the other big thing of your story that I really love is building a team around you. You're working in the industry, you're networking, you're finding these people. And I think sometimes people try to go to open a restaurant in a community and they don't have the roots they need, the foundation they need, the team they need to be strong. And I think if wherever you're going to open a restaurant where you have roots. And I think that also comes out of your story. Do you think that's a good statement or a bad statement?
It's tremendous that if I would have opened up this restaurant in, South Philly, and nobody knew me, I don't think it would have worked. What happened was West Palm Beach at the time, 1997, was a very much smaller than it is now. Clematis Street has ebbs and flows. This restaurant, I was a busboy in. The PR story was just amazing. People knew me on the street for being a door guy, and all of a sudden, have you seen Rocco's new restaurant? There wasn't any other nightclubs or anything. There was one across the street, Dr. Feelgood's, but that's what happened. Plus, my partners owned a very successful restaurant called John Bull, which is in like central West Palm, and they had a following too. So there was 4 of us, and we opened up these restaurants. They also own, so there's 16 restaurants or 17 restaurants in the brand. 8 of them are Rocco's, and then 8 of them are different concepts.
Okay.
Just so your
Yeah.
listeners know that there's an umbrella called the Big Time Restaurant Group, which is just the management company, not necessarily the ownership of all these different restaurants. There's different owners.
And I want to get
one.
into that too, because I do think that that's the future of scaling. Is you basically you develop your management company, and then you go and you find opportunity. You create opportunity for people who are the chefs, the mixologists, the
empowerment.
Exactly.
That's the number one. Like, empowerment to me is, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. Like, I love empowering people. I think it's amazing. If you want to be a busboy and you want to be a busboy for the rest of your life, then maybe that's your dream and your job, and that's what you want to do. But some of these guys have been, they're general managers in my restaurant. I will take you. And people come to me and they're like, look, Rocco, I have a friend of mine that his name is Mike Ferrara. He just opened up a bunch of restaurants in upstate New York, like New Rochelle and stuff, or I forget, not Rochester, New Rochelle.
Syracuse?
No, it's called Wood and Fire. Got to give him a shout out. Mike Ferrara worked for us in Palm Beach Gardens. He left and opened up not 1, not 2, not 3, like 4 different restaurants. I love this guy. I love what he did. And he said, just recently told me he's going to open a Mexican restaurant. I'm like, whatever you need. Like, I want to help people get where they want, because he helped me.
Yeah.
So why would I be egotistical and be like, you know what?
And that's the biggest thing, and that's like the leading edge, the driving force of Restaurant Unstoppable, is that if we start helping each other out.
Love this guy. Yeah.
Yeah, if we start helping each other out, and we realize that the guy down the street isn't our competition, but our collaborator, our colleague.
I say that during the pandemic. I said my competitors have become my companions.
Yes.
So like Vaughn and some other guys that were involved during the pandemic, we had like a group call, and some of them own Mexican restaurants, and I said, we have to work together through this, and maybe we'll never talk again. And I just got off the phone with a friend of mine, and he said, you were right, you said this was going to happen. And I said, yeah, like I'm not, listen, I'm just one guy that's doing certain things. The pandemic for me was halftime.
Yeah.
I said, I'm putting my head down. We're going to make it. We're going to get through it. But I needed my competitors to be my companions.
And guess what? You're all going to rise to the top together. You go so much further together, and it's a trend I've picked up on. The people that are at the top of their game in any city all are best friends with each other, because they're there to support each other. I've
yet to meet anybody in the restaurant business that hasn't embraced. I've met people like us. I've met people that have been like, listen, not everybody's going to like us, but people tell me, do you know that a Mexican restaurant's opening up next door? And I'm like, great. I'm like, I embrace it. Let me know, and I just was downstairs talking to somebody, and he's like, how you doing? I'm like, everybody has their time in the light. Mm-hmm. The key is to just keep the lights on.
Yeah.
I don't need to be the best thing in town anymore, but, people come to Clematis Street now to come to Rocco's Tacos because it's institutionalized. Been here 13 years.
Yeah.
And, we're still opening up in new markets where people are like, oh, man, I used to drive 2 hours. I'm like, 2 hours?
That's ultimate
I'm
compliment.
like, wait a second, and then I'm handing them gas money. I'm like, wait, you're
yeah.
going to get to.
So let's dial back, because it
Sure.
sounds like from your story, from what I gathered, you really evolved the most at Maquila. That seems like where you came across your partners, where Carl really mentored you and groomed you, where you became a little bit more maybe mature during this time. You also mentioned that you kind of hit from 2000 to 2005, you weren't necessarily living the best lifestyle. You weren't making the best choices.
Yeah, so I'll tell you,
Let's start there.
Yeah, and everybody else, this is another quick story. So just like every good restaurant guy, I drank and did drugs, and it was part of my lifestyle. Beers after work, cigarettes, and the fast times and everything, and a lot of sacrifices that I've made in my life because of that. Also, which I learned from my father. I was married and divorced. I had a girlfriend, and now I have a beautiful little girl. The girlfriend has now since left, and now I have this wonderful fiance who I will give her a mention, Celeste, which I've met in sobriety. So I am in recovery. I've been sober since February 6th of 2016.
Okay.
I did try to get sober a couple times before that, and as luck or would have it in my story in my life, I got sober in 2016, and I also got diagnosed with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis in September of 2016. Smart enough to know that some of the drinking that I was doing was self-medication, but I haven't picked up a drink since. And if people, I embrace people that drink. I love people. I do miss drinking. But I work in the program with a lot of people, and most of the guys that I help are restaurant guys, or DJs, or people that are in the industry that are like, wait a second. So I've basically become Sam Malone in Cheers. That you remember he didn't drink either, and I walk into my bar now, and the first thing people say is, "Hey, can we do a shot with you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, not anymore." But that's my story with my drinking, and then I have multiple sclerosis, so I've also said, if I was ever successful, which in my eyes, I think I'm successful because of the things that I'm able to do, like sit here with you makes me a very, better than I was not sitting with you, if that makes sense. I'm a spiritual guy.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm able to do with my time is pay it forward. When I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, I have a PR company, and I said, look, I'm going to come out, and I'm going to make it like my thing. And we have a website called Join Team Rocco, and I do all of these interesting grassroots, no big corporate sponsors, to raise money for MS and awareness, because I think we're going to find a cure. And that's where the quote actually also came from, because I did a speech. And you really don't know with multiple sclerosis, and I don't want to get off topic, when you look at somebody with MS like you're looking at me right now, you can't necessarily tell how somebody's feeling. And for us, you want to see somebody like in a wheelchair, or you have to, that's where we feel, and there's a lot of people with multiple sclerosis that look and feel exactly the way I do and know what I'm talking about. So the Facebook page yesterday, I posted that I got my vaccine, I got my MS infusion yesterday, and I said, this is my story, and you can see it and let people know that. And all people from everywhere, like writing me, thank you for sharing your story, I was nervous, or hey, can you tell me this or tell me that? So paying it forward is a big part of my story as well.
You were paying it forward before multiple. I know you were.
Yeah, I've done breast cancer. Yeah. We created a nice bottle, which is right there with Arturo Lomeli from Class Azul for breast cancer, a pink bottle, and all the proceeds went to breast cancer. I don't want to sit here and tell you, but
that's a big part of your success. I think is just giving. The more you give, the more you make it about other people. You have to just have faith that it comes back around. It serves you in the long run, right?
Yeah. How do you own a restaurant? All these people give to you.
Yeah.
How do you not give back to them? Now, I'm not sponsoring every football team because there's certain things that we can't do, but I've saved dog. I mean, like, people have come and given me stories, and for some reason I've just latched onto it and said, okay, how are we going to do this? Give me a task and let's make it and let's go through. And that's how we got through this very difficult time with the pandemic.
Yeah. But back to your time, nightclubs, 2005, you mentioned you got sober in 2016, but it sounds like you kind of cleaned up your life a little bit. Like maybe you weren't completely sober, but maybe you were starting to live a little bit more intentionally. It seems like you were trying to clean up your act around this.
Yeah. So I had one shot at this, and we got investors, and the investors happened to be family member, and I was like, look, I'm going to go for it. And
2005.
This is 2000. Oh, I'm sorry, not 2000. Yeah, it was 2007.
2007.
2005.
You're working at Makila.
When I was working at Mokila, I had one shot to get my life together, and it was either make $600 a week for the rest of my life and, live off of, somebody else, or figure out how I'm going to embrace what I am. It really, the way that it happened, and this is the truth in 2005, is my investor, and that's where I'm going, he ended up coming and sitting in the restaurant and goes, Mokila, how much would it be, how much money would it cost me to lose if you were going to open up your own restaurant? Because he goes, I believe in you, but I don't think you're going to make it. And then I put the plan together, and he actually was my partner, you know what I mean? And then we opened up these stores, and that's how he believed in me.
But he didn't think you were going to make it.
Most restaurants start up. Mexican restaurant on Clematis Street in West Palm Beach in 1990 or 2007.
So he's basically saying, I'm willing to lose this money.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious. Reflecting back, did you like? I think we need to clean up our shit, right? If we're going to open a restaurant, we need to get a level of seriousness. We need to get off whatever path might be pulling us in the wrong direction. And I don't know if that kind of happened for you, but
that's why I partnered with these guys.
Okay.
So they own. So I'll give you the names. All right. It's Bill Watson.
Yeah.
It's Todd Herbst, Herbst, and Lisabeth Suma, and then the other partners remain silent. But what we did as operating partners, the four of us, conceptually came up with this. Now, you walked in here today, and you could see to the right, there's a management company that operates the restaurant. Yeah. That is the NXIVM of the universe right there. So what I did is I said, I don't want to do that. I want to be out shaking hands, taking shots, getting on the bar, pouring tequila, saying hi to the people. So they looked at me and said, all right, that's your position. That's what you're going to do. They're going to handle all of the back of the house, and they're going to handle all of the like accounting, accounts payable, and so on and so forth. So that's where the whole thing happened. If I did not have them, I don't think this thing would have worked. We put four people together, no egos, four of us, and each person has a task. Lisa Betts, the culinary director. Todd oversees with Bill, the big time restaurant group with the management company. Todd and I do the design, and it all is one great, like we talked about, it's the machine, right? Back to the dishwasher. We all have to work together, and that's how conceptually the restaurant company worked.
So they were in the picture way back in 2005.
They've already been restaurant people, running operations.
Were they a part of
no.
Makila? They weren't a part of Makila. So you're working for Carl at Makila.
Right.
Your partners are Bill, Todd, and Lisa.
Right.
You mentioned Rich, Monty, Denise, Fallon, Pete
Vitas.
Pete Vitas. So I'm just trying to picture, like, the visualize. So all these people you're working with, these are going to be your front line, your right hand men and women, right?
So I reached out to them when I went. Mokila ended up switching owners.
Okay.
So I didn't pilfer Carl's people.
Okay.
Carl left and went, and I don't know where he went at the time, but he had left. And then I had ended up calling Richie, Monty, Richie. There's Richie Pinella and Richie Garcia. Two of them. I ended up putting together my team.
Yeah.
That's my team. Monty's no longer with us. He works somewhere. But everybody else is. And Richie Pinella, who was my beverage manager, retired. But, I mean, that's what's going on. And Pete is the director of operations. So it's really amazing.
Yeah. So, okay. I want to hover a little bit over Carl because you identified him as a key mentor.
Sure.
So who were you before Carl, and who were you after Carl? How did he help mentor and guide and mold you into the man you needed to be successful?
So Carl had two boys, and Carl was a restaurant guy too. I'm not going to get into his personal life, but Carl was able to do things that I wasn't able to do.
Like what?
Such as he was able to have a personal life that didn't interfere with his work life.
Okay.
I wasn't able to do that. I wasn't able to go out and do those things. Carl didn't fire me. He educated me to learn, like almost punishing me. I'd come in hungover. He'd be like, hey, you're going to do this today if you want to keep your job here. There were certain things that he taught me. He was hard on me because he loved me, but I was just a waiter for him. but it was bigger than that. He opened up his arms and embraced me as almost like a little brother. I used to call him my old man, and I would send him Father's Day cards as a joke and this, that. He taught me about wine. He taught me about service. He taught me about personality. And then he taught me about tequila. He did what I did with my team. He said to me, do you want to be the maitre d' of this restaurant that I'm opening called Moquila because you're so personable? 2 weeks later, I was the GM.
Okay.
And then I stepped back. But that's where he mentored me and took me. And then when I started to have troubles and along the way, I still would call him. Hey, what would you do in this situation? What would you do in this situation? Hey, I'm doing this in this situation. How do you do this vendor? Carl's very knowledgeable about tequila as well. So that's what ended up happening with Carl. So to this day, I would still call him and say, hey, look, I've got this situation going on, and I value his opinion without getting into details of the situation. You know, growth was difficult. I had a restaurant in Brooklyn that was a very difficult time in my life. It was probably the lowest time of my life because the restaurant wasn't succeeding as well as Ego. I thought I could open a Mexican restaurant from Florida in downtown Brooklyn.
Yeah, 1,500, 1,400 miles away.
I'm from New York.
Yeah.
It worked, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And it was too big, and it didn't. And it's closed because of the pandemic, unfortunately, you know, and I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to say that, but he helped me a lot there.
Yeah. What did he teach you? You said he taught you about personality, but it sounds like you were naturally personable.
Meaning that you got to slow your roll, right? So I'll tell you a good story about not, you know, walking into a room. I made a lot of money as a waiter, and I tell this story to a lot of people. On the millennium in the year 2000, we agreed to pool the restaurant. Most restaurant people will know this, that you pool your tips. I had a call party, which is a party that requested me to wait on them. The guy's name was James or whatever. So in the beginning of the night, we all said, yeah, 2,000. It ended up being a wash. It wasn't as good as we thought. But I ended up with another guy making $23,000. Wow. So I had like $9,000 in cash in my pocket, and $13,000 went to the house. And they looked at me and they said, look, you could either keep the cash or you can deposit it with everybody else. And I said, you know what? I'm on the team. I deposited the cash. I made $375. Wow. That's what I mean about a life lesson. Like, it's not necessarily about who's the biggest guy in the room or who's the best waiter in the room. And a lot of these people are like that. A lot of people, you know, fierce competition in the workplace, and especially with waiters. Oh, you didn't seat me. This is wrong. That's wrong. See, I know all these things because I did them.
Yeah.
He taught me that the worst section can be the best. And he would sometimes put me in the worst section to prove to people that it's about
your job,
personality.
Yeah.
You can wait on somebody. I mean, I don't know about you, but you could go into the worst restaurant with the worst food, but you'll go back because Rocco was like this waiter you can't even believe. Like the guy just, and that's what I mean about personality.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're selling yourself. And he also taught me how to take bad situations and make them better. I was the cleanup guy at Gigi's.
How do you take a bad situation and make it better?
So it's based on acknowledging, accepting, and apologizing. That's how you take it. You have to acknowledge the problem. You have to be sincere, like body language.
Yeah.
You know, hey, you know, Mary, I got your call. I wasn't there. I haven't done, you know, most of the time I haven't done my due diligence to see what happened in the restaurant, but I wanted to let you know that I acknowledge your complaint, and I want to let you know that I accept it, and I'm going to apologize for whatever happened. You didn't go out to dinner tonight to have a bad time, and usually that's it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not. But I could show you email after email after email, and during the pandemic, it's very, very difficult. But that's where you have to be personable. And there's some people that aren't like that, and I don't think that's the restaurants that I want to go to. You walk into a restaurant where every single table is open. Hey, can I get a table for two? It's going to be a 2-hour wait. Huh? Yeah. You understand where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
There's a difference between, we got a lot of reservations. The bar is right this way. It's going to be a little bit of a wait. and maybe they have the ability or they don't to get you. You know, that's what I'm saying. It's all about the delivery and the experience.
Yeah.
And I hope that people learn from that, because that's what I try to teach people. We're in the hospitality business. You have to be nice. I tell people, if you're in a bad mood, you have the right to go up to your management team and say, I can't work today. My girlfriend left me this morning. I'm done.
Yep.
Go home. Because you're going to take that and Carl taught me that. You're going to bring that into the dining room, and then I'm going to walk into the dining room and I'm going to say, oh, my girlfriend left me, and everybody's going to start to be like, did you speak to Rocco? And then he's
going to bring down the power. He's going to bring down the energy.
It doesn't work.
Rocco, you're dropping gold on us. And now let's really get into the early days of Rocco's Tacos. When did you know that this was going to be, that this was a possibility? You knew you wanted to open your own place. You knew you wanted to do tequila. You knew you wanted to do a Mexican restaurant. But did you know that this old restaurant where you got your start in Florida was going to be the spot from the beginning?
Well, first, it wasn't my money, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't have as much risk as everybody else. All I had to lose is my ego, right?
Yeah.
We keep going back to the ego thing. We opened it up, and it was wildly successful. Like crazy. What happened was my mother, God rest her soul, she lived in Kansas, and all of a sudden she calls me, and she's like, hey, Kelly Ripa and Regis just mentioned you for like 10 minutes on national TV. And I was like, so Kelly Ripa came down. I used to get on the bar with white platform shoes, which you could see here, and I would pour tequila, as much as you could drink, with the tequila from the Champs playing. And, you know, I don't know if I'll be able to do that after the pandemic, but she happened to come in and see me, and she was blown away at the personality that I had.
Yeah.
That we did these things, and I think that put us on the map. I think people were like, what's this place? What are they doing here? What Mexican? He gets on the bar, and it was just wildly successful. So then we figured, we're like, whoa, we have something. Then we end up saying, we're going to expand this thing. My partner Todd said, well, they had another restaurant, which was Carl's, called Big City Tavern in Boca.
Okay.
Carl ended up buying this restaurant, which was my partner's old restaurant. We ended up buying it from Carl and making that the second Rocco's Tacos, which is in Town Center in Boca.
That's where I was the other day, where I got the B-roll. If you guys, you'll see that B-roll with the video version of this. So you pulled this team together, and I think again, I've got to put emphasis on having a team from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I think giving yourself time to get into a community, to work in a community, to develop a network, to pull that network together, to give them a common vision. And like, you can't do it by yourself. And then also your business partners. You had 3 other partners, and you all had your lanes. What advice do you have for us if we want to take this approach where we're not using our own capital, we're not using our own assets, only our time and energy, right?
Sweat equity.
Sweat equity, yeah. So what advice do you have when you're setting that up? If you're having somebody give you the initial capital, what do we need to keep in mind?
I think that you have to create a really good business plan, and you can't falsify your budgets, and you have to underestimate. Because if you underestimate, you'll overproduce, and then your investor will be happy. And really, you should not shoot for the stars in the beginning, because the reality is there's so many different variables that can affect a restaurant. Mm-hmm. You get shut down. I just had a fire in Palm Beach Gardens. Restaurant's closed for 3 months. There's things that can happen. Restaurant investors should know exactly what they're getting involved in. And I believe in, I've also been honest for the last 5 years, which I wasn't before. And you have to be honest about, what you're telling your investors. In sweat equity, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put in my time, and this is what you're going to get. I don't know. There's a million ways you could structure your investment deals. I don't know how your listeners would do that. If I was mentoring them, they can email me and I could give them some suggestions. But
let's pretend like somebody did ask, like, what would you recommend? What do you like when it comes to structuring?
I mean, we have the same team that we've had since day one. But I do other things on the side. I've now eliminated myself. If I invest in something, I've eliminated myself from voting rights. I want to be silent. I just want to put my money in, and I want to be quiet. And I just don't. That's my personal feeling, because I want to focus on one thing, which is Rocco's.
Yeah.
The way the investment strategies, some of them have worked, is there's tax benefits for people being investors if they don't get their money back. But usually the way that is last money in is first money out. The way that, I've done deals is first money in is first money out. So the investor doesn't lose the risk. And then the last money in usually is when you go over budget, right? So that's your capital contribution. So when you put in your capital contribution, that means you got skin in the game. The investor likes to see that and know that you really are in it to win it too. So that's one of the ways that you can do some sort of investments,
Awesome. What about these partners? So you mentioned Bill, Todd, and Lisa. They are... What lanes does everybody get in? You're the operations guy. You're on the floor.
So, this is going to get confusing a little bit. None of us work for the restaurant.
Okay.
So I have a company called Got Rocco, which is a restaurant consulting company. I mainly handle like marketing, promotion, and liquor.
Is that your PR company too?
No, PR company is called Karma.
How many companies do you own?
I don't own Karma.
Okay. Gotcha.
Karma's owned by a guy named Chad Fabricant, which I was his first client. He become like a dear friend of mine. So big shout out to Chad. Yeah. Got Rocco is that. And then the Big Time Restaurant Group is a management company.
Okay.
They manage the restaurants. Now you take that hat off and they own the restaurant. So my consulting company consults for Rocco's Tacos. Their management company manages Rocco's Tacos.
So how are you saying, is this vertical integration, or as far as like, do you have an LLC series? Like, does each one of these companies have their own EIN, or is there one that?
No. Each is their own entity doing business as one. Okay. Then I have I own a master company called El Taco Guapo, and that is the operations for the Rocco's Tacos brand, where Pete is the director of operations, and then we have some corporate people that work there, and they go throughout the restaurants.
So you got Big Time Management, Got Rocco, El Taco Guapo.
Right, that is the nucleus of the universe for the Rocco's brand.
And each one of these entities has their own LLC, or is there
Correct.
Own EIN, own LLC?
Big Time Restaurant Group has nothing to do with Got Rocco. Big Time Restaurant Group has nothing to do with El Taco. El Taco has nothing to do with Got Rocco. Do you understand?
Yeah.
We are all companies that run the individualized company.
Now, do Bill, Todd, Lisa, and yourself all have stake in each three of those companies? Or,
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. No, we don't.
Okay. Got it. So,
the ownership structures are all different, and unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to discuss their business.
But this is like really helpful information.
Yeah, sure.
To know how to set it up. So why did you choose this approach of,
you have to hire an accounting firm. You need to get P&Ls.
Yeah.
You need to do daily sales reports, right? You need to also have functionality for human resources. You need in-house counsel. You need all of those things. Big Time Restaurant Group bundled that all into one piece.
Yep.
They get percentages of, however the store performs and whatever, vendor relations. Then you also, if you have 60% food and you have 40% liquors, which we do, who's going to manage the beverage side of it? So because I got my master's CRT, I did everything with tequila. I said, I'm going to run the ball with this. So I do the liquor and the management of the marketing and the promotions. With Got Rocco.
Okay.
So I handle that. Now, we all oversee the restaurant, 4 of us, but we talk to there's a flow chart. We talk to the director of the owners.
Yep.
Outside the management company.
You, Bill,
Todd and Lisa, but we talk to the director of operations. Mm-hmm. He then talks to the beverage operations. Okay. He talks to the corporate chefs, and then he goes all the way down.
Okay.
And that's it. And we keep it structured like that because if all of us went into the restaurant and Matt, the general manager in Boca, was getting advice from me, or he's getting direction from Bill, so we keep everything very tight. Mm-hmm. They also have 8 other restaurants that they have to run. So it's a very well-run, very organized organization.
Yeah. So was it like this from day one, or did you build this? What was it like on day one?
There was no Got Rocco.
Yeah.
I was the general manager of the first, second, and third store.
Okay.
It was only until the third store that they said, maybe you want to take a step back and we have something here and you could oversee it from afar. Mm-hmm. And then it developed into this.
Yeah. So I think this is where like the gold's going to be, is how to start getting to the point where you're scaling, right? And you have to remove yourself from the day-to-day, and what things to consider when creating something that doesn't depend on you anymore. Right?
So you have to hire people that are better than you. That's the key.
Yeah.
When you do a job interview and we sit down, you have to hire somebody that knows more than you do. Because if you don't, then what am I doing? Now you got to promote people within the organization. Now you might say, well, they don't know more than you. They've been there with you at the same time, but I'm not in there. I'm not in the foxhole, and I'm not doing it. So we try to promote from within. We want to empower people, like I said.
Yeah.
But that's where you get to the point where you're like, wait a second. I never ran 3 restaurants by myself before. Hell, I never even ran a chain. We should look for somebody that has. This guy it sounds so crazy. When you own a restaurant like this size, with this many people, I think there's 1,900 people total. You need somebody that's going to bring something to the table. It's just funny. We say it all the time. What are you bringing to the table? And we want somebody that's going to bring something like, what do you know that I don't know? Yeah. And then let's feed off each other. And that's it. I will take a suggestion from everybody. Busser, dishwasher, bathroom attendant, cop that is doing details like, hey, man, maybe you want to change the floor mat in the front. It's a little high in 88 compliance. And you're like, well, yeah, you know what? I didn't think about that. Bring it to me. And, one of the things we do is that makes a very valuable, if you listen to your employees, you're going to be golden. You have to listen to them. Now, some of them have crazy ideas. Yeah. Hey, we shouldn't do this and this. You don't have to
act on every suggestion, but at least open yourself up to the potential, right?
Yeah. We should make T-shirts that say, if I owned a restaurant, I would. If this was my restaurant, I would. Right. Hey, and you hear it all the time.
So making that transition from working in the business to on the business, what are some of the key things you said? You surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, hire people who bring something special to the table that you don't have. What else?
Well, obviously, to get corporate-wise, you got to do background checks. You got to do, make sure that people are who they say they are. Checking references is a huge thing. What is your history? What is your background? So many things are digitized nowadays. Yeah. You could Google anybody. Yeah. You could look at their Facebook profile, and you just want to make sure that you're putting the right pieces in the puzzle that are going to make the most sense. And sometimes you'll be blown away. The person that you didn't think was going to be the person that you thought they were end up being amazing. Now we're actually restructuring again. We just hired a restaurant consulting company that worked with us for a year, and consulting companies are interesting, right? So they come and they take a dump, basically, in nice words, and then they leave it, and then you have to see how it stinks, and then you kind of work with it, right? This company that we're working with happens to be very good, and they came and they took a dump, and they looked at stuff that we could do, and we could do it better. And that's what happened during the pandemic. It's hard to hire somebody to tell, and a lot of people had trouble with this. We had a consultant come in and tell us what we were doing wrong, and we thought we were doing it right. So you have to step back and say, well, wait a minute. And that's another key component. That's why it's important to listen to the people that are around you. I don't know everything about the restaurant. I don't even pretend to.
Well, let's get into that then, because I feel like there's probably some things like, what was the perspective they lent you during this most recent rendition of improvement?
So one of the most important things that they gave us organization. They created a flow chart, which I just said, that there's a board of directors, then there's a director of operation, and the way that things need to go. And it's controlled chaos, right? A restaurant's chaotic to begin with, most of them for the most part. There's always something that's going wrong. And that's what was one of the most important things. You have to know, and you have to stay in your lane. Perfect example is yesterday I'm building a restaurant in Palm Beach Gardens, and the kitchen floor is not up to par. So it's not my job to talk to the kitchen. It's not even my floor to walk on. It's my partner, Elisabeth. So I called her and I said, hey, before I sign off on this floor, she came and looked at it. She just did you have to be able to step aside, and you have to say, hey, this is what you do. I had an interesting conversation. We were bringing in too much inventory. So I called my director of operations. I would have normally have called the beverage director and say, stop doing that. Skipped over the DO, but I don't do that anymore. And it's interesting. You have to remain, restrain your tongue and pen. You got to keep quiet, and you have to listen, and then make sure that you execute correctly. And it's hard in the restaurant.
Yeah.
Things happen so fast.
But what they helped you with is establishing that flow of communication.
Sure.
So it can be consistent, right?
Right. I mean, they put some operational systems in, more accurate job descriptions, so people really know exactly what they're supposed to do. Quality control, line checks, and then the way that we do performance reports. We have this company now called iAuditor where we do line checks. It's digitized and it comes in, and there's certain systems that they gave us that we weren't aware of. One of the things we're working on right now, which is interesting, is reputation management, because social media drives, they say, between 10 and 15% of your business. A company the size of ours, if you don't acknowledge them quickly, it could spiral out of control.
If somebody reaches out to you and
they write a review, or somebody writes something, or there's something that happened, and unfortunately I bring up the pandemic again, but if somebody's not wearing a face mask, I didn't sign up for that.
Yeah.
Nobody told me that we were going to do this 10 years ago.
Right. Man, we've covered a lot. I know we have about 15 minutes together. Is there anything we haven't discussed up to this point that you want to get out that you think would add more value to the conversation?
I just think that, people, first, I'm an open book. Like I said, anybody could reach me anytime. As long as I have the time. Time to me is the most valuable asset in the world.
And thank you for making it.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, and you choose it wisely of how you spend your time, because we don't know how much time we have left.
Yeah.
But and if you want to spend time in a place, whether it's a restaurant or, a park or whatever, how are you going to spend that time and how are you going to do it? Me, I have a little girl, and hopefully one day I'll have more children, but I want to make sure that I leave a legacy for my children like my father has instilled in me. And maybe some of it's good and some of it's bad, and I'm sure she'll feel the same way. And hopefully she doesn't get involved in the restaurant business as I'm smiling. But it's all about time management and how you spend your time. From the minute that you come in, how do you set up your station? How do you develop that type of routine when you come in? And I think it's important, and it makes your job fun and easier, and it's just better.
What's one element of time management that if my listeners start doing tomorrow will be a game changer?
So tonight, before I go to bed, I make a consequence list, right? And part of it's from recovery and part of it's from, just management. But I look at my schedule today, and I'm honest, right? You and I had a very honest conversation, and I told you why I didn't want to go into my restaurant and this, that, and the other thing. And, I wanted to give you all of my time.
Yeah.
People, hey, Rocco, what's going on?
Yeah.
But I put together a consequence list. Usually it starts with, if I drank today, I'm going to be honest with you, what will my consequences be? I wouldn't be here for my interview. I wouldn't pick my daughter up from school. I'd be hungover, blah, 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 blah. But what I do is I take 5 things the night before that I know I need to do the next day and that I didn't do the day of, and that's how I plan it out.
I try to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I call it winning tomorrow today.
Yeah.
And I have an alert that goes off every day at 6 p.m. to remind me what's the most important thing I do tomorrow.
Yep.
You got to prioritize. And there's a great book out there called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy.
Okay.
That has incredible tips on list management and how to prioritize your list between urgent, important, and all this different thing. Like, you need a list and you need to prioritize things. You need to win tomorrow today. Or what's your, how do you say it? What was the term you used for what you called it something?
A consequence?
Consequences.
Yeah. Well, consequences, because I'm a real guy that if you miss appointments, you missed appointment.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
You book too many. If you need to make time management is so important. I did another podcast, with a friend of mine, and it was, what do you do? What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? And what do you do after that? And what do you do after that? And what do you do after that? And you have to get into a routine.
Yeah.
And it makes for a much better life. If you're all over the place, it usually doesn't work. And it's hard because in a restaurant,
it's hard. It takes a good solid 3 months to 6 months of consistently getting into or being consistent with your routine to create habit.
Yeah.
For sure. But once you get there, it's a game changer.
Yeah, of course.
So one other question I had, because I think it's important, and you pointed it out early, and I wanted to come back to it. You said that you learned a lot of what not to do from watching your dad, and one of those things was cash management. You get into money, you have some money, and you don't spend it well. What advice do you have for somebody who's having success in the industry They're getting a fat, wad of cash every night. Give us some good profit management, cash management.
I think it's with anything, and I instill these values in my daughter, and I'm comparing the listeners to an 8-year-old girl, but you have to look at a dollar. Okay, so I've got a $2 bill right here, right? So how much of this am I going to be able to afford to put away? How much? It could be 5 cents, it could be 10 cents, 7 cents, 8 cents, whatever it is. So in 2007, I ended up befriending a restaurant accountant who happens to be another really genuinely good friend of mine now. And he said, as long as I am your accountant, you're going to put away XYZ on every dollar you make, no matter what. He said, this is what we're going to figure out, a formula for you. And I've put that away, and it's there. Yeah. And it's there this is where we go back to my father. I have a retirement, I have an IRA, I have a 401k, and I have all of these things that most people would be like, what do I need that for? Because I started when I was 35. I have life insurance when I got 36. I mean, who gets life insurance when and good for me because I'm uninsurable now because of the MS. Like it's hard for me to get insurance. I still could get it, but that's cash management. Whatever you do, you got to put something away, even if it's a penny.
Yeah.
Whatever you can do or whatever you can afford. A lot of people come to me to borrow money. I don't lend money to anybody. If you ask me, usually I'm just going to say, I'm going to give it to you. You're going to take it. You're never going to give it back to me. And please don't call me for money. I'm just saying that 9 times out of 10, I'll tell people here, I don't want it back. I can't carry that on my shoulder that you owe me money. Yeah. But I ask them, first thing, what do you do with your money? And they get very defensive. Well, you don't know how I live, and I don't live like you, and I don't. Well, it's not. I just asked you a simple question. What do you do with your cash every night? And I see you made $400 last night. What did you do with that money? You gamble? Do you tell me what you do? Do you drink? Do you do drugs? Or do you have a kid that you would support? That's important to know. But I think you just have to save.
Yeah. So what you're describing, there's a rendition of what you're describing called the Profit First Money Management System. And you take 10%, you got to pay yourself first. 10%, you have an income account. Every cent that hits that income account, you get 10% of it. And it goes to a separate checking account. You wire it. You never see it unless you're investing in something else that's going to make you more money.
Right.
That's like a house or something like that. And we teach that over at Restaurant Unstoppable Network. So if you are not doing this and you want a money management system to help you start developing wealth for yourself, and here's the thing, as you start making more money, that percentage stays the same. You start putting more and more and more away. It's exponential, and it's very powerful. So yeah, thank you for getting into that. And we have to still bust out a speed round, but I want to ask you one more question. Before we get to the speed round. And the mission statement of Restaurant Unstoppable is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. And I truly believe that if we transform the restaurant industry, we'll transform the world because we just have so much influence. We touch so many lives. So how have you transformed? Who are you today? Who's Rocco today versus who Rocco was in 2007? How have you transformed?
How have I transformed? I think that I'm a better father, friend, companion, coworker. I'm very intense, and I'm much more calm. If you walked around this office, which people I've worked with here for the last 13 years, they'll tell you that he's not even the same person that I knew 13 years ago. I take my time, and I think that my lessons in life through what I've been through, not just the last 13 years, but I'm 47 years old, I'll be 48. Have transformed me into that type of person. And now each day, taking the time with you today, I've learned, and I'll become a better man by doing that for tomorrow.
We're back, and the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor, a habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success?
Generosity.
What is your biggest weakness?
Failure.
What is one question you ask or thing you look for when you're building your team?
Honesty.
What is your biggest challenge today?
Fatigue.
How are you overcoming it?
Exercise.
Share one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team. This is a core value, a way to be, a way to act.
Core value, way to act. Compassion. Be compassionate.
What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your team at Rocco's Tacos that's common within your businesses but not common throughout the industry?
Smoking.
Don't do it?
Don't do it. Yeah, smoking is my number one pet peeve. If the standard, if I go in and I see that, smoking and telephone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that smoke, when you approach a table,
yeah.
it's a really off-putting for
Sure.
a lot of people.
And telephone technology, this telephone is the distraction.
What is one book that's a must-read to make us a better person or restaurant operator?
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yes, I love that
Yes.
book. I mean, obviously, you got to give a fuck.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying,
But what's the message of that book?
I mean, to me, that, there's certain things that you just can't control.
Yeah.
And it's back to the thing that I just told you about the one guest that's just never coming back. And not that you don't give a fuck, but just that one person that you're just like, let it go.
Yeah, you got to choose the fucks to give.
Right,
Because
exactly.
you can't give fucks about everything.
You can't. And
so be selective.
Right, you have to be selective.
Yeah.
And, people that leave, sometimes my heart's broken, and that's another one.
What is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough or good enough or often enough?
What restaurateurs do not do
well enough or often enough?
Give thanks.
Name one service you've hired or outsourced to. So this is something that you recognize somebody else does better than you, so you go to them.
Inventory.
Who do you use?
Bevintel.
Nice. And similar question. We're getting into kind of a 2-for-1 here. What's one technology you've adopted within your restaurant that has had a huge influence on operations? I mean, Bevintel is definitely that.
Yeah, so iAuditor.
Wait, is Bevintel a group of people that come?
Yeah, they come in and they weigh your liquor.
Okay, that's right.
They do it by weight instead of by looking at it.
Got it.
And then they give you an accurate count, and they match it up to the cost.
Got it. So that is a group of people, but what is a technology now that you use?
iAuditor.
What is iAuditor?
iAuditor is the line check system for the restaurants. That it's not a group of people, but it's technology where we can put in like an opening checklist, and that they are held accountable for making sure that checklist is good. We also have cameras.
Yeah.
So like you can look to see if everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing at the same time.
Got it.
Technology too is the advancements in touchless right now, QR codes. There's so many things that we have that are incorporated in the restaurant. We're now switching all of our operating systems to Aloha and, Table Safe, where we get alerts if there's this Pulse app that I have on my phone is insane. If there's a aggressive gratuity or there's an aggressive comp, I get an alert. I could call the store in real time and be like, hey, table 22, why did you pick up their whole tab?
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah. So it's an anomaly.
Right.
That might be, there's a reason why.
Well, we've caught people stealing,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, that's what happens.
Yeah. And that was Pulse by QSR.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it QSR?
No,
QSR.
and NCR.
NCR. Thank you. That's right. Okay, this is the last question. It's a doozy. Get ready for it. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of your work in your restaurants will be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy. Pretend it's your daughter you're talking to. What are the 3 pieces of wisdom you're giving her?
To love, right?
Yep.
To share, and to be kind.
I love it. And Rocco, you've been incredible today. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out. That's how I found you. Our boy Vaughn Dugan called you out. Who do you respect and admire in the industry and think would make a great guest mentor?
Can you do somebody in New York?
Yes.
My friend Mike Ferrara that I
Yes.
mentioned to you from Wood and Fire, Southern Table, and Off the Rail. So I'm calling him out.
Mike Ferrara, look out. I'm a northern boy, so I'll be seeing you real soon. I would love to get you on the show. And how can we connect with you if we maybe want to come join your team, or if we, for whatever reason, or social media, what's the best way to
So Rocco at roccostacos.com. That's it. You could reach me, and I will get back to you.
Beautiful.
The only thing is, don't ask me for money, but you could ask me for advice, and I'll give you the best I can.
Yes,
all right?
beautiful. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Rocco. This has been great. There is no questioning. You are unstoppable.
Thank you.
We'll cut it there.